Okay, assalamu alaikum. Hope you are well, everybody. And good evening for most of you, I suppose, wherever you are. Okay, let's see who we have with us. Assalamu alaikum, Mahbub. Hope you are well. Hamid, looking forward to the presentation. Not sure I'll be able to see it live. If you have time, could you clarify the meaning of shirk and shirk be ibuda? Example like last verse of Surah Al-Kahf. Like the Ibadah verse, you mean? And Surah Al-Kahf, yeah, shirk. Well, I've explained that in quite a few streams now, and the last one especially was literally all about shirk and the mushrik. So look at that one. But shirk billah, it's with ibadah. Shirk is only about ibadah, and that will come up a little bit in this one, in this stream as well, in terms of the difference between a kafir and a mushrik. But I'd encourage you to see the last stream as well. Assalamu alaikum, Adriana, good to see you as always. Lens. Ayman is here. Assalamu alaikum, Ayman. Hope you are well. Ameen. قل ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. Thank you, Ayman, for always posting that. And assalamu alaikum to everybody else. I'm streaming this to Clubhouse. Yeah, alright, that's fine. Excuse me. Alright, let me get my Do you know brother Zakar 1, Sarid 1 on YouTube? I think I've heard of. It's not unfamiliar to me, but doesn't ring a bell right now. Is it that there's one brother with like the very, very thick, woolly-looking beard, black beard? Is that the guy? I'm not sure. Anyway, let me get the presentation on the screen so we can go through it. As always, I should be reminding people about this in the beginning of every stream, but let me remind now that the link to join is at the top. It should be at the top pinned. And please feel free to come on and share any contemplation of the Quran that you'd like to share. That's the purpose of this stream. It's for people to come along and share contemplation, literally caravan of contemplation. So I would like it sometime to be less of me presenting things and more of other people. But I'm happy to carry on, of course. Okay, let me just get the. Here it is. Let me shift this around. Make myself less intrusive. There we go. All right. Okay. So I'm going to be. So because last stream was all about shirk, and in basically trying to show an example, it's basically focused on one verse in the Quran, which gives the example of the state of the mushrik. So I thought, let's carry on with that and just do something about kafir. There isn't an analogous verse in the Quran which gives sort of like this, the same sort of insightful description of the condition of the kafir. There isn't one method like that in the Quran. Not that I know of anyway. But there are other verses that we can look to. There are many which, of course, are highlighted a lot. Some of them I will highlight myself now, and others maybe they'll be a little bit new to show a different aspect that maybe isn't considered as often. Okay, so excuse me if I cough and stuff a little bit. The very first one is that it's often overlooked, actually, right? the actual surah, which is called Surah Al-Kafirun, right? So it has this it's speaking about the kafir, right? Since قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, I haven't changed a lot of these translations, so it shouldn't really be. I prefer to keep the original words in Arabic rather than let kafir be its own term, even in English, right? Rather than these translations. I heard one time somebody, I think it was Adnan Ibrahim, mentioning that often it's become quite traditional for Muslims in Salah to recite Surah Al-Kafirun and Surah Al-Ikhlas, right? And he mentioned that I think it was him. He mentioned that if you look at it, this surah, this surah, Surah Al-Kafirun, is more about Tawheed, which is practical actions, right? And the other surah, Surah Al-Ikhlas, is more about theory, right? Nazari. It's more about the theology, right? قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ, say, He is Allah, the One, etc. لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ, He begetteth not, nor has He been begotten, etc. That's more like theology, right? Whereas this is more like practice, right? But what I want to highlight here is that this surah is heavily about ibadah, right? It's heavily about ibadah. And I've used the translation here of, I think it was one of the translations, I think Aubrey, he uses the correct thing here of serving, right? Servitude, because that's what it's talking about, ibadah. So the surah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ, say, O you kafirun, لا أعبد ما تعبدون, right? I won't serve that which you are serving, right? لا أعبد, I will not serve, or even in the future, right? لا أعبد, I'm not now and I will not in the future, right? لا أعبد ما لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد, nor are you in ibadah to that which I'm in ibadah to, right? You are not in ibadah to that which I am in ibadah to, right? Then next verse again, وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ, nor will I ever sort of this, وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ, right? مَا أَنَا بِفَاعِلٌ, I will not do it ever, right? Indicating sort of like, you might, this will be a constant for me, will never happen. وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ, right? I will not be in ibadah ever to what you were in ibadah to. This is like the abadtum here, it's almost like in the past, whereas in the other one here it was ta'budun, what you are in ibadah to now. Okay? And this verse, وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ, is repeated exactly as it is again, وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ here. But, what I want to highlight here isn't so much people ask why there's this sort of repetition and things like this, and the subtleties in different words, and that's what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is this helps us see to note the key difference between the mushrik and the kafir. So we talked about the mushrik last week. So a key difference here is, of course, the mushrik is an ibadah to others with Allah. Okay, as we've said many times, shirk is the mushrik is engaged in shirk with respect to his ibadah, right? So the mushrik is in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah. But this surah is framing the kafir as somebody who is not in ibadah to Allah at all, right? Kafir, somebody not in ibadah to Allah, right? In this surah, of course, this is one thing about this surah, of course, is it's directed to the Prophet, right? So when anything which has been directed to the Prophet like this, and he's sort of speaking to interlocutors here, in this case the kafirun, it grounds it more in history. So he's talking to his people here, to the kafirun there, right? قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. You say to these kafirun, right? So he was in ibadah to Allah, the kafirun from the people. So we're not talking about the mushrikeen from the people, right? We're talking about the kafirun, right? They were not in ibadah to Allah, right? So it's not that they were mixing, right? It wasn't that they like the mushrik who's in ibadah to Allah and to other than Allah. Here, of course, the Prophet himself is in ibadah to Allah only, right? And this surah is saying that they will not be in ibadah to Allah, right? They will not be in ibadah to Allah. They are in ibadah to other than Allah, and that's it. So there's a clear divide here. This is not shirk, right? They are not engaged in shirk, right? And in a different way, you could say that, from another aspect, you could say that every kafir is in the end going to be, in some sense, a mushrik, right? But not every mushrik is a kafir, right? You could say every kafir is going to be a mushrik because whether they are outwardly in ibadah to something is different, but they could be in ibadah to their hawa, to what they want, to their own fancies, that sort of thing. But in the end, what I want to show here is that you've got this divide, right? The kafir in the surah is not in ibadah to Allah, right? Not in ibadah to Allah, not like the mushrik who's in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah. Okay. And then, of course, the very important verse about Iblis, right, about Shaitan. وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. And when we said to the angels, prostrate before Adam, so they prostrated except for Iblis. He refused and was arrogant and became of the kafirin. Okay, now Shaitan here was a kafir, right? One of the reasons why he was a kafir is very similar to the previous verse, right? لا أعبد ما تعبدون, right? The kafir is not in ibadah to Allah, right? In one sense over here. So when Allah commanded Iblis to prostrate, he refused. Okay, that is not a state of ibadah, of course not, right? The abd is obedient to his master, so he wasn't like that. The kufr in this verse is also about ingratitude mostly, right? The three things are mentioned are that he refused, he was arrogant, and he was of the kafirin. Right now, of course, here the kafirin, it can't mean disbelief. Yeah, obviously so, as many people point out. It also isn't rejecting something to be true. As you know, some people put that definition as kafir, right? Kafir is somebody who rejects what they know to be true. Okay, but that doesn't have to be kufr, right? There are many things a person can just reject, which he knows to be true, and he can reject them, and it's not that big of a deal, right? It's not that major, right? But anyway, in this verse, already in terms of rejection, if there was something rejected, that would be covered in the first thing that he did. Abba, he refused. Okay, so any rejection would probably be covered by this part, right? Abba. Rather, it was his ingratitude to Allah in refusing after having been so favored, because of course he is there with the angels. Right now, some people say, he was an angel, maybe not. But the point is, he's definitely in an exalted place. Right? Iblis here is definitely in a very exalted place. In another verse, God says to him, "Ma yakunu laka an tatakabbara fiha." It's not for you to be arrogant in this place, right? Akhruj, get out, right? So he's definitely in a very favored place, right? And in that favored place, knowing Allah is his Lord and the angels all prostrate, he refuses. That is ingratitude. There's ingratitude part of that. Okay, to be favored like that and refuse to obey. Okay. The other thing is that number 2 and number 3 explain his refusal. Right. So istakbara wa kana min al-kafirin. Istakbara, he was arrogant. He was arrogant towards Adam. Right. He was arrogant over Adam. I'm better than him. And his ingratitude, his kufr was towards Allah, right? So he had these sort of things explain his refusal. He was istikbar, he was arrogant, and he was ungrateful to Allah, right? If he wasn't arrogant, he would have just prostrated to Adam, and if he had shukr, true shukr to Allah, even if he was arrogant, he still would have prostrated, right? He still would have prostrated, just out of gratitude towards Allah, right? But he doesn't, right? So these things also explain that. The other thing, that is why, he understood, another way to see why what is meant here is his ingratitude, is that of course when he gets vexed at being, he gets vexed at being commanded to bow to Adam, and at being called out as being an ingrate, as being ungrateful, as being a kafir, what does he promise to do? He promises that he will show up the descendants of Adam likewise to be ungrateful, okay, as in lacking true shukr. So it says, ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُم مِّن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شِمَائِلِهِمْ. I will come to them from before them and from behind them and from their right and from their left, and you will not find most of them shakirin. You won't find most of them being of shukr, of gratitude, right? And this was part of his spite, right? It was part of his spite that if I'm kafir, if I'm a kafir, I'm the ungrateful one. I'm going to show you that these people, Adam and his descendants, you won't find the majority of them being shakir. You won't find the majority of them being the opposite of kufr, right? Being in shukr. You won't find that. So implying that they will likewise be ungrateful, that they will likewise be kafirs, right? That these descendants of Adam, I will show you that they are also kafirs, that they're not shakirs, they're not grateful. Okay? And so there was no call for you to honor Adam above me, right? Right? Why are you honoring Adam above me? Why should I have been made to prostrate to them? They're not better than me. You'll find that they are also kafir, that they are not shakir, right? So I mean, this has been shown many times by many people that in the Quran, these are the true opposites, right? The true opposite of kufr is shukr, right? That these are that they help define each other, right? That the kafir and shakir, right? And Allah says in the Quran, I put this into that video essay of Quranic Islam versus inherited Islam. Inna hadaynahu sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafura. The insan has been given guidance, to the two ways. Imma shakiran wa imma kafura. You can either be a shakir or kafir, right? You can either be a kafir like shaitan, or you can be the opposite of that and be a shakir, right? And there are many verses which show that those are the opposites, and that kufr means ingratitude, right? One of the famous ones is of course Sulaiman alayhi salam, when the Ifrit brings the throne of the Queen of Sheba, and he says, "This is from the testing of my Lord, to test me if I will be grateful or ungrateful. لِيَبْلُونِي أَشْكُرَ أَمْ أَكْفُرُ. Will I be grateful or will I be ungrateful?" Right? In a sense, also that can include it sometimes in being ungrateful is rejecting, right? Because when you're the pinnacle of being ungrateful is to reject a favor, to not even recognize it, right? To not recognize a favor, right? So he could have said that this Ifrit, he did this by some other means, and just found a way to belittle that favor, right? Belittle that that person's ability, which ended up being a favor to him. So also we have, of course, the verse in Surah Shu'ara of Musa and Fir'aun, where Fir'aun is listing out the favors that he did to Musa, right? Did we not raise you among us, right? Did we not do this, etc., right? And then at the end of it, he says, وَفَعَلْتَ فَعْلَتِكَ الَّتِي فَعَلْتَ. And then you did your deed which you did when he killed the tax. Well, if he was a taxpayer, but he killed the person from the people of Fir'aun, right? And he said, and you are of the ungrateful, and even that's in the translation as it is, right? You are of the ungrateful, وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, right? And obviously, pretty much everybody will translate this one, where Fir'aun is saying to Musa, وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, that of course what is meant here, that you are of the ungrateful, not that you are of the disbelievers, okay? But I'm bringing it up here just to note that Fir'aun, of course, he wasn't speaking in Arabic, right? He wasn't speaking in Arabic. What this is God's translation of what Fir'aun said, right? What Fir'aun said. And kufr, it is a complex term. Okay, it's many-sided, right? It does have many sides. Its core is ingratitude, definitely. But it doesn't, for example, in English, it doesn't have a full exact English equivalent, right? Izitsu notes this, that that kufr is is a positive term in Arabic, right? Whereas every iteration in English seems to be a negative, right? Even when they translate it as disbeliever, it means not believer, right? Or non-believer. When you translate it as infidel, it means without fidelity, infidel, right? It's all negative, negative term, not a positive term. Even when we say ungrateful, right? Somebody's ungrateful, it's a negative term, right? In English, ungrateful, ingrate. Whereas in Arabic, it's a positive term. It's not made out of a negative, right? Kafir, inside the word itself, it's not a negative. It doesn't say not something. Okay. So the same will likely be here, right? That whatever Fir'aun said, right, what he said, it would have been it would have meant ungrateful in his own language, right? And every language has a word or something for ingratitude, right? For ingratitude. So what Fir'aun was actually said was translated into Arabic by God as kafir, right? Showing that that is a central meaning in kufr. This ingratitude is a central meaning in kufr. So another way to look at terms in the Quran is to look out for the alif lam al-ta'rif, what we say in Arabic. So when it says the, right, al-kafirin, right, when the kafirun are mentioned, and then afterwards the next verse, or in the same verse it continues, it says al-ladhina, those who, right? So this is, in a sense, defining al-kafirin, right? So here's one of those. So in this verse says, ثم يوم القيامة يخزيهم ويقول أين شركائي الذين كنتم تشاقون فيهم قال الذين أوتوا العلم إن الخزي اليوم والسوء على الكافرين. Right? Then on the day of resurrection, he will, he will disgrace them and say, "Where are my shuraka? Where are my partners for whom you used to oppose?" Right? Or really, in Arabic, it says those whom you used to sort of like make yourselves wear yourselves out for their sake, right? Wear yourselves out for their sake. Why? Because in ibadah, remember the shirk is about ibadah, right? So it's asking, Allah is asking, where are these shuraka that you were in ibadah to? Where are these partners of mine? And those who were given knowledge will say, indeed, a disgrace this day and evil upon the kafirin. Okay, so why have we moved from the shuraka, right, the shuraka, to here saying al-kafirin? Well, the question is asking, where are they? Where are they? And the people of knowledge are saying they, the partners that the mushrikeen were in ibadah to, they are the kafirin. You know, we mentioned this last time, but that in a way, shirk is ibadah to kufr. Right? Shirk is about ibadah towards kufr, towards the kafir. Right? أَلَمْ أَحَدْ إِلَيْكُمْ يَا بَنِي آدَمَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا الشَّيْطَانَ. Did I not tell you, O Bani Adam, not to be in ibadah to shaitan, not to be in ibadah to the kafir, the big kafir himself, shaitan, right? And the kafir, of course, like we said, is not in ibadah to others, but others will be in ibadah to the kafir, right? And that's what you have a lot of the time. You have the leaders, the people at the top. These are the people who others are in ibadah towards, right? They are the kuffar, and the followers are the mushrikeen, right? The followers are the mushrikeen. So when Allah here is addressing the mushrikeen, where are the shuraka? Where are the partners they used to be in ibadah to? And those of knowledge answer, basically, where are they? Well, they are in disgrace, right? The kafirin, those who were the partners, they're in disgrace, right? So again, this is showing us the split between the mushrik, and the kafir. But anyway, so the next verse says, after it says here, su al kafirin, the evil is upon the kafirin, or the disgrace is upon the kafirin, then it tells us something about them. Right? It gives us a bit of a sort of a definition about them. It says, alladhina, those who the angels take them, cause them to die, while they are being wronging themselves, while they're being sort of they're wronging themselves or oppressive or they are oppressors to themselves or being unjust to themselves, right? And then there's another verse I didn't put it here. إن الكافرون هم الظالمون, right? Right, that the al-kafirun, they are the zalimun, right? That there's a link there between kufr and zulm. So it's saying that they are the ones who were thing. فَأَلْقُوا السَّلَمَ. So then they, the kafirun, أَلْقُوا السَّلَمَ, right? They sort of so they sort of like offer up, they're surrendering, basically offering up their surrender. ما كنا نعمل من سوء. They say we never used to do any evil, right? We never. And this is another thing we mentioned before, that the kafir, kufr, a lot of it is about action as well, right? A lot of it is about action. ما كنا نعمل من سوء بلى إن الله عليم بما كنتم تعملون. But Allah saying here, but rather, no, God was aware of everything they used to do. So again, it brings us back to the whole thing with, when it comes to salvation, it's all about actions. It's all about actions. Okay, saying we were not doing any evil. No, you were doing evil, right? You were doing it. But yes, indeed, Allah is all knowing of what you used to do. Okay. So and this is the difference. Okay, so they are those whom the angels take them while they are in a state of being ظالمون to أنفسهم, right? So that's another way. And here's another verse, same idea, where we have a verse which says al-kafirin, sorry, and then al-ladhina, then defining them a bit. Okay, so in this case it's about how the people of the fire will call out to the people of Jannah. ونادى أصحاب النار أصحاب الجنة أن أفيضوا علينا من الماء أو مما رزقكم الله قالوا إن الله حرمهما على الكافرين. And the companions of the fire will call to the companions of paradise, pour upon us some water or from whatever Allah has provided you. They will say, indeed Allah has forbidden them both to the kafirin, those who took their religion as distraction and amusement. الذين اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا, and whom the world, this lowly world, deluded them. Right, so these are is in the sense also a definition or description of al-kafirin, these three things. Okay, الذين اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا, they took their deen as just a plaything, right, as just something to amuse themselves with, and as play, right, distraction and play, while this lower world deluded them. The world deluded them. غرتهم الحياة الدنيا, right? Then the verse continues, فَالْيَوْمَ نَنْسَاهُمْ كَمَا نَسُوا لِقَاءَ يَوْمِهِمْ هَذَا وَمَا كَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يَجْحَدُونَ. And this day will forget them just as they forgot this meeting day of theirs and for having rejected our verses. And this is where you have actual rejection here, juhud, right? Juhud, the thing where people say that a lot of the definitions of kufr now are that it's to reject what you know to be true. That is actually juhud in the Qur'an. It isn't kufr. Then you have this verse, right? But the only verse where it says they are the kafirun in truth, right? أولئك هم الكافرون حقا, right? So this is a verse says إن الذين يكفرون بالله ورسله ويريدون أن يفرقوا بين الله ورسله ويقولون نؤمن ببعض ونكفر ببعض ويريدون أن يتخذوا بين ذلك سبيلا أولئك هم الكافرون حقا واعتدنا للكافرين عذابا مهينا. Indeed, those who disbelieve, yakfur, they say, right now, here is where you can say yes. Because again, remember, kufr is it has many layers to it. And part of it, can actually be used in the sense of rejecting. Okay, but here, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَيُرِيدُونَ أَن يُفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَ اللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. Those who disbelieve, I'm just going to read it as it, disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger and wish to discriminate, to separate between Allah and His messengers and say we believe in some, or we will have faith in some and reject others and wish to adopt a way in between. Now, why would they do that? So this goes back again to the kafir is not in ibadah to Allah. The kafir is not in ibadah, is finding his own way, right? It's not in ibadah to Allah at all, right? So they're just picking and choosing, right? Here they're deciding to find their own way in between. They're not in ibadah. If somebody is in ibadah, is not going to look for their own way with all of this. If the person is in ibadah to Allah, he will follow all of the messengers, accept all of the messengers. Those are the disbelievers in truth, okay? Or those are the ungrateful ones in truth. And we are prepared for the ingrates, a humiliating punishment. Now, why would it be taking this verse with kufr to have its central meaning of ingratitude? How does that come about? Well, this is because it comes back to understanding the idea is that God's sending of messengers from himself is a great blessing. Right? It's one of the greatest blessings, God reaching out to humankind and sending messengers. Okay? It's a blessing that should be met with shukr, right? Shukr towards God, right? Actual practical gratitude, right? In following, okay? And it's not, having faith in these messengers, it isn't for their own sake, okay? It's for our own sake, and it's shukr to God as well, right? Having faith in the messengers is for our own sake, and it's also shukr to God, right? And its opposite would be what? Would be kufr, would be ingratitude, right? Ingratitude, not having faith in these messengers that God has sent, is a flagrant form of ingratitude to God, right? Especially when you already have faith that He has sent messengers, right? So there are people already who understand that God has sent messengers, and they say, okay, we're going to have faith in some and not faith in the others. Why? Well, now you're making it more about the messengers and about your own picking and choosing with regards to them. Okay, so the one who has faith in some while being, scorning others, he has shown that his acceptance of those that he does accept wasn't for God's sake, but it was out of some other reason, some other design with respect to those messengers. Either you're having faith in this messenger because he's an Arab, he's a Jew, or he's from my tribe. Now I have faith in him, right? I'm choosing it for this reason. It's not out of ibadah to Allah. It's not out of shukr to Allah for sending him. It's for some alternative reason. And by those reasons, the person is choosing between messengers who he will accept, who he will not accept, right? So all of that is showing the depths of ingratitude, right? Showing the depths of ingratitude, that the acceptance is actually false, okay? Yeah, so in that sort of way. So I don't think that's as good as I can explain it right now. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Just a couple of more verses I have, I think. Yes, just this one and the other. Here is another verse. يعرفون نعمة الله ثم ينكرونها وأكثرهم الكافرون. They recognize the favor of Allah and they deny it, and most of them are kafirun. Most of them are ungrateful. Right. So again, like we're talking about blessings here. It's not about thing. They're saying يعرفون نعمة الله. They know it, right? So these are people who believe in Allah, right? They recognize the favor of Allah means they believe in Allah, right? So how in the end we're saying they're disbelievers, they're kafirun are disbelievers? Isn't that? It means that the ones who are most like this are the ungrateful, okay? Not the disbelievers. They deny the blessings of Allah out of ingratitude towards Him, not out of not believing they are from Him, okay? Because that's the worst type of ingratitude, is to deny completely that the favor took place or that it came from its true source, okay, when you know it to be the case, right? And that's why you have, for example, the story of Qarun, right? Qarun and Musa, right? Qarun, who had all of his wealth, right? So that, just the keys needed many people to carry it. This is in the story of, it's in Surah 28, Surah Al-Qasas. I haven't put all of the verses here. I think most of you know the story. But what people said, okay, wow, some of the people of Musa were saying, wow, look at Qarun, he's been given so much blessings, so much wealth. What does he say? He says, إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ. I've only gotten this due to my own knowledge, right? So he isn't grateful towards Allah for it, right? He doesn't show any shukr, right? He doesn't show any shukr at all. Instead, he shows complete ingratitude, right? Ingratitude by not having a greater vision that this wealth has come to him in the end. It's a blessing, right, in this dunya, right? And it isn't just completely due to his own cleverness or knowledge, right? Allah gave that to him, as the verses themselves say, and he says, "No, I got it from myself, my own knowledge." Right? In the end, what happens is that the earth swallows him up. And what do the people say? And those who had wished for his position the previous day began to say, "Oh, how Allah extends provision to whom He wills of His servants and restricts it. If not that Allah had conferred favor on us, لولا أن من الله علينا لخسف بنا." And then it says, وَيْكَأَنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Right? He would have, how is it that the kafirun don't succeed? Right? Kafirun la yuflih. Right? Kafirun. And of course, here Qarun, he wasn't a disbeliever. He wasn't a disbeliever in God. Right? But here he was ungrateful. He was ungrateful. One more verse, is last verse, yes. So there's a string of verses in Surah Al-Zumar where it talks about, towards mankind, that you should follow the best of that which we have revealed to you, right? Before the day of judgment comes, and you should say this or the other. In this case, أو تقول لو أن الله هداني لكنت من المتقين, right? That on the day of judgment, a soul should say, we've sent, if only God had guided me, I would have been of the muttaqeen. I would have been of the people of taqwa, right? Showing that it is taqwa which will save, right? أو تقول حين ترى الأحزاب لو أن لي كرة فأكون من المحسنين. Or when it sees the punishment, it might say, the soul might say, if I could only go back, I would be of the muhsineen, of the people of ihsan, those of good actions. Again, showing that is what saves. Bala, and says truly, قد جاءت, but yes, قد جاءتك آياتي فكذبت بها واستكبرت وكنت من الكافرين. But my signs came to you, you denied them, you gave them the lie, and were arrogant, and were of the kafirin. Right? What does that mean? You've got this triple thing here happening, right? فكذبت بها, you rejected them, واستكبرت وكنت من الكافرين. So, again, this part is not talking about disbelief. Kafirin is not talking about disbelief, because that would be already encompassed in the previous part. You gave it the lie, you rejected it, you said it wasn't true, right? كذبت بها, but then you were arrogant on top of that, and you were of the ungrateful. And this all came about because of ingratitude. All right, okay, that's all I have. End of this presentation. Let me go back to StreamYard and see how we're looking. Okay, I don't have anybody backstage. Assalamu alaikum, Bosni Jack. The Kafir and Shirk has been misunderstood, misused, abused, and mistranslated by Muslims and non-ex-Muslims. One of the things that happened, I think, that as sort of da'wah started to take off in the English-speaking world, because early on it used to be Kafir, for example, early on used to be translated as infidel, right? You don't see that as much anymore. People don't say infidel. But early on, the earlier translators, the first translators into English, they recognized that it meant more like that. That's why they translated it as infidelity, right? Not having faith. But I think that this ended up becoming, it seemed too harsh, right, to people in English later, to call somebody an infidel. That's very bad. Right? So to try to solve, no, Quran is not saying you're an infidel. It's just saying you're not believer. You're not a believer. That's not so bad, is it? But in doing that, they made it worse, right? Because now it's basically saying that the Quran, by by making sort of the term kafir to be more to be nicer, right? Then you're making it out that the Quran is condemning something which isn't so bad, right? And then that, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what happened, I think, right? Um, then they started to move away from infidel, away from keeping it as a very strong term, making it a very weak term, non-believer, right? Just a non-believer, somebody doesn't believe, it's not that bad. And so now when people they read the Quran and it says about disbeliever this, disbeliever that, okay, they think, oh well, it's not that bad. Why is all of this just for not believing? Well, it isn't just for not believing. It isn't for not believing at all, right? It's just that that's what happened to. That's just how the language developed in English, I think. I'm back. Yes, I'm back. We have a lot of what is it? Fish, baby shark. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad. How are you? Inshallah khair. Kirot again, brother one. You see. Brother, one of your link from Shirk fanaticism Qur'an is some titles praying in a Sunni mosque. His shirk is not there. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I need to put that on, right? Yeah. So yeah, I have a post on Reddit called Shirk fanaticism, where I'm just saying that look, people sometimes they're going overboard by calling everything shirk, 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 shirk. And one of that was that praying in a Sunni mosque is shirk, right? So somebody was, I think there was another YouTube channel that was saying that. Your thoughts on 660? Yeah, so that's a very good one, right? So 660, it says كفرنا بكم وبدا بيننا وبينكم العداوة والبغضاء أبدا حتى تؤمنوا. This is in Surah, this is with reference to Ibrahim, right? So it's saying that there was a very good example for you in Ibrahim and those with him, right? When they said to their people, "Inna bur'a minkum," we are basically innocent of you, free of you. وَمِمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, and from that for which you are an ibadah to other than Allah, right? Right. So that which you are an ibadah to other than Allah. So of course they are an ibadah to Allah, and like we said that the kafir is an ibadah to Allah. مما تعبدون من دون الله كفرنا بكم وبدا بيننا وبينكم العداوة والبغضاء أبدا حتى تؤمنوا. Right? That we have done kufr to you. Right? So in here it is you sort of like it is meaning rejecting. We're sort of rejecting you, or we're rejecting that you have any favor upon us. Right? Reject that you have any favor upon us. And between us and you, there has arisen adawa, enmity, right? Enmity. Because what happened is, of course, Ibrahim, what happened to him? He was, thrown into that fire, and there were others with him. I mean, this is one of the thing about Ibrahim's story, that this verse speaks about those with him, but as far as we know, in the original, in his early days, it was just him alone, right? So this is one of the things about this verse I've always wondered: who are the people who were with Ibrahim? Yeah, we know that Lot joined him later, right? So does it refer to that? I'm not sure. When Lot was his nephew, right? Apparently, from what it says in the Bible, anyway. So in this case, it's what it means. I think that when they said kufr here means rejection, but rejection that you have any hold upon us, that you have any favor upon us, that we owe you anything. We don't owe you anything, right? We don't owe you anything, right? There's no gratitude that we owe you, right? And with all of the hostility that you're showing towards us. So that's how I would look at that verse. Yeah, this verse exactly. Prophet Ibrahim and those with him and said, we disbelieved, right? Kafarna bikum, right? Um, so I'd put it in those sort of terms. It wouldn't be that thing that, it's like we are, we reject you. You can put it in that sort of way, and you put it in, we, we, we don't owe you anything. Okay, we don't owe you anything. You are our people, but we don't owe you anything. And this would be in reference to the surah at large, because the surah at large, well, what is it about, right? This example is being given to them. Why? It's because if you look at the start of the surah, the very first verse, what were the Muslims around the Prophet doing? They were extending help to the enemies. They were extending the help to the enemies out of feel out of like what's it feel it's called fealty and obligation to them because they were their relatives, right? This is really about the Muhajirun, and the Muhajirun Sahaba in Medina, trying to buddy up with their, well, not buddy up, like warn and help and feeling obligated to their people in Mecca to warn them about what the Prophet was doing, right? So at the start of this, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا عدوي وعدوكم أولياء. O you who have faith, don't take my enemy and your enemy as as allies. Okay, تلقون إليهم بالمودة, throwing towards them love, right? وقد كفروا بما جاءكم من الحق يخرجون رسولا. While they have been in kufr towards what has come to you of the truth, and they have expelled the messenger and yourselves. Okay, just because you had faith in Allah, your Lord. Don't do that when you are going out in jihad in His path, right? تلقون إليهم بالمودة, right? تسرون إليهم بالمودة. You're doing it secretly as well. وأنا أعلم بما أخفيتم وما أعلنتم والله بما تعملون. بما أعلنتم ومن يفعله منكم فقد ضل سواء السبيل. Whoever does it, he's gone astray. Then it says لن تنفعكم أرحامكم ولا أولادكم. Your ties of kinship, right, and your children will not help you, right? Will not help you. On the day of judgment, you will be split apart, right? So it's about this. You have no obligation to them, right? It's bringing up this example of Ibrahim, that they were making a break from them and from their people, right? That they had no obligation to them. They don't have to show them gratitude in this way, whereby you don't have to show your enemy gratitude. Okay, kafarna bikum, right? We're being ungrateful in a sense to you, right? We don't have to show you any gratitude just because you're our people, especially after the enmity that sprung up between us. Yes, the hourglass. That's how Muhammad is there. How can you fix the original terms Kafir and mushrik? They've been mistranslated. I think you just have to sort of try to understand them as best you can. And then also, I would recommend keeping them in English as much as possible until they become their own terms in English, right? Just as many other terms have become in English. Yeah, I think YouTube does have a word limit for live stream. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Oh, Antoine, yes, that's from Antoine Gomez from when we were doing the Aaron Ra live streams, right? I think that's who that is. All right, got a couple of people backstage and bring them on. Assalamu alaikum, Alif. Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well.
Doing well. How have you been? Yes, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you.
There's a little lag, so now I think I might have fixed it. I had two windows open. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you fine. How have you been?
All right. Yeah, unmuted you. So I'm gonna try to keep it on topic today. Be patient for the next one and spread these out. Keep this in 10 or 15 minutes. But I've been studying a lot of sects and trying to understand the Qur'anist movement in light of the different sects and all the history and theological debates. And of course, this
Mm,
idea of kufr as being disbelief, I don't think it's just an artifact of recent mistranslation because
mm,
it's been a pretty big divider in the Ummah. And
mm,
so, for instance, there's this debate between the literalist Atharis or the Maturidi Ashari tradition, which takes the
mm.
hand, the face, etc.,
Yeah.
as being metaphorical. And this was supposed to have been buried like 800 years ago, but it comes up on Twitter sometimes, people accusing each other of disbelief for not interpreting the Quran in the same way, which is obviously going too far with it.
Mm,
Um, and then the Abadi sect is very interesting because obviously they were the quietest offshoot of the Khawarij, who were terrorists and obviously not good. But that I read in this book by I think Peter Wilkinson on Abadi origins that for the first 100 years of their independent tradition prior to the Abbasids, they were pretty much independent of the Umayyad Caliphate, and they basically just followed the Quran. They didn't really
mm,
have a Sunnah tradition, and that they later adopted hadiths in order to interface with the Abbasid peoples. And they adopted it through what you might call the Quran centric framework of filtering it on a criteria where any hadith that goes against the Quran gets thrown out.
mm,
Um, and then the key thing about Ibadism is that they don't differentiate between fisk and kufr.
mm,
So, whereas in Maturidi theology, you can get a get out of hell, not free, you're in a lot of pain for a while, but you can get out of hell eventually, even if you drank and did a bunch of zina, but you had faith, right? So
mm,
the belief is the key thing.
mm,
And there's a more modern version of that in Ashari. Um, and you can see why they would interpret that from the Quran because there's a lot of association between the munafiqs and having died in defiant disobedience, having been of the fasiqeen, um, and that there seems to be overlap in the Quran about the mushrikeen are also kafirin, right?
mm.
So they didn't delineate between these things, but given what you're outlining today, perhaps the majority of Muslims were more correct to make a delineation there, and they were overdoing
Mm.
it. Are you familiar with the Abadi belief system?
Not much, not much. I mean, I've seen a few things here and there, but not much to be honest. No, what I mentioned before, but in terms of the translation, no, it's what I meant in just English, in English language. Early on, I think it's because maybe the very early translations, maybe it's because they were done by non-Muslims, right? So they were able to just look at it with fresh eyes, just the language. They were just translating, you know, the words from the Arabic to the English, right? So they chose
Mm,
things like infidel rather than disbeliever, right? Even though in Christianity, right, they have the whole thing about believing or not believing, etc. That's very central there. So why did they go
yeah,
for infidel, right? In the early translations, right? They did that because they were just looking at the language, right? Um, so, and that's what I meant from that side. But you're right in terms of theology and dogmatic sectarianism within the Muslim world for a long time. Yes, it's a lot of things have been about belief, right? You must believe this, you must accept this aqidah, right? The whole doctrines of aqidah. You have to believe this, that. They have the whole list, and if you believe some of these things wrong, you could be a kafir, right? If you don't believe that the person
yeah.
who doesn't believe it is a kafir, then you're also a kafir, right? They have things
And
like
it
this.
seemed like the list got longer every century for about
Yeah.
500 years until it
Mm,
got trimmed. Okay, fine, that's enough
yeah.
litmus testing.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm,
so the one of the biggest problems if I could just snipe out one hadith from history and try to make the history of Islam better, it'd probably be the one about killing the apostate, right? And I've been looking into, been listening to a lot of Abu Layth the last month, and I learned from him that Ikrimah was the sole transmitter of that hadith, and he was of the Khawarij. So the Khawarij's whole thing was being able to justify killing people by basically saying, you know, we're still in the framework of the Mecca War. It's ongoing, and that a pretty broad range of people, including those who profess to be Muslims, qualify as kafirs because they've sinned, or even making a deal with Muawiyah and trying to buy some time was, you know, they were unsatisfied with that. And then the Umayyads and everybody else adopted this. So this is probably the worst case of taqlid in the history. And then, you know, just execute whoever they find to be unorthodox, right? And that this even fueled the Mutazilite Minha persecution, which then flipped. And then we got the Hanbali doctrines becoming disseminated into what became Sunni orthodoxy through taqlid, the uncreated Quran, and the whole hadith maximalism thing, instead of this more hadith relativist thing where the Sunnah was subordinated to the Quran. So it seems like that is the bowling ball that has done the most damage, and it largely comes from basically overly expanding the definition of kafir, and therefore it's highly germane what I'm trying to get at to this lesson. What do you think about that theory of the history? Is that too cute? Is that too simple?
I mean, it is. There often it does get more complicated than that, but because there were a lot of factors happening, it wasn't just Ikrimah. Ikrimah, you know, did have that role to play. Even I think one of the children of Ibn Abbas would later put him in prison, saying he used to lie about my father, right? And you know, he would invent lies about my father, and I think it was Sa'id ibn Musayyib, or in some narrations it's actually Ibn Umar, right? Who would say to his Mawla, don't lie about me like the Mawla of Ibn Abbas lied about Ibn Abbas, right? So he definitely had a huge function of that, and he would later, of course, go and join a revolt, right? Ikrimah. So he had a very sordid history, and you know, just a lot about tafsir as well. You know, in the tafsir, a lot of tafsir is also from Ikrimah, right? Which is very, very strange. Ikrimah was not one of the he was not one of the closest or best students of Ibn Abbas. He had others, right? Sayyid ibn Jubair, for example, was a very knowledgeable, very close person to Ibn Abbas. But in the end, what happened, of course, is that those who were closest to those who, you know, a lot has to do with the Sunni Shia split, right? So when it comes to who gets to do the most narrating, right, it has to do with who is the closest or has the most links to the people in authority, right? They're the ones whose their narrations are going to fly the most, right? That's why those who narrated over 1,000 narrations are those who they are. Okay, it has to do with you know, we have, you know, Abu Hurairah, you've got Ibn Umar, you've got Aisha, who else is there? Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Anas. Okay, you'll find that those who narrated the most narrations were either close to the people in authority, or their students were, right? Or they were seen as opposition, as opposing the main opposition, right? So, for example, Aisha, her narrations got, you know, filled up because of one of the things she stood against Ali, and then also her primary narrator was close to the Umayyads, right? So you had this thing with Ikrimah because he joined, you know, he was of the Khawarij. And the Khawarij, yes, they were enemies to Banu Umayyah, right? But they were also enemies to the Shia, right? So it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So that's another reason why his narrations became popular and entered into different fields. But yeah, I mean, look, the problem is it's such a big, vast empire at the time, and so many things are happening all at once, all around. Um, but you can see the movement, right? The movement is just moving. In the end, a lot of the blame falls on the people in charge, right? The people who are in authority. So the Umayyads primarily. They're the ones who set the stage and who set the pathway for the rest of the Ummah to follow. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting how they were executing people for refusing to curse Ali, radiallahu anhum, when
Mm.
basically that's become the distinguishing feature of why Shia are bad from a Sunni point of
Mm.
view, is that they curse companions, right? But it was,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think it's even a little more complex than that, because the Shia differentiation happened over about 100 years, and the same was with the Abadi separation. But Abu Layth's theory is that Sunnism or Proto-Sunnism was really an apophanic, trying to be non-sectarian. So it's like, why would everybody become sectarian so quickly? The Quran says it's bad. Well, they thought they weren't, and that we just don't curse people, or we don't accuse people of being kufar for having sinned or for having differentiating interpretations, as long as they're in the basic, shahada, right? And then ultimately, there's been this drift, and this is kind of a classic Quranist narrative of explaining Hadith, is that it became progressive. Each madhab that was founded became progressively more Hadith heavy, until the Abbasid Caliphate, Bukhari, post Minha, post Hanbal, led to that codification. And then Muhammad, brother Muhammad, is in the chat, referenced a book called Criminals of Islam, which I found a lot of the sources to be specious, like books that maybe didn't exist and so on. But okay, it was a fun little read. The guy's kind of going off, maybe overly so, against big names in the history of Islam, and
Who
he
is it
was
by?
citing, and the book's called Criminals of Islam. I don't remember who the author, but yeah, basically he was asserting, and I don't know how scholarly based in history this is, that there was a lot of tension within Proto-Sunni Islam between the madhabs, that the Hanbali emir in uh, I don't know if it was Tajikistan or Afghanistan, said that the Shafites should pay jizya because they were like people of the book. They're not really like proper Muslims like
Yeah,
us
yeah.
Hanafis, right?
Yeah, there was a big,
And
there was
that,
a big, there was a couple of big massacres between the Shafi'is and the Hanfis, um, in a lot of
wow, I didn't know
places.
about that.
Yeah, there was a few massacres between them in various places between the Shafi'is and the Hanafis, that they used to be in they used to have a big rivalry for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the Shafi concept is that the Hadith is a part, or the Sunnah is the Hadith, because it was historically displaced enough that you would have to rely on Hadith, instead of the Maliki approach, which is more ethnographic to what people were doing in Medina, which doesn't necessarily mean they were right. There were different Hadith, I was listening to Jonathan Little lecture yesterday, and that there were very much regional Hadiths in Mecca versus Medina versus Basra versus Kufa, and that they had a lot of drift between them. And anyway, so the point is that Sunni Islam is something that had to be invented to create a certain amount of taqlid and respecting of differences in fiqh and respecting of differences in adika, which is really interpretation of the Quran. But then to say, but these certain things we have to agree on, and that way we can we can be satisfied with the compromise. And it all really, a lot of it really comes down to this idea of like, what is kufr and what is iman, right? And somehow weird things like the hard line or semi-hard line determinism interpretation of Qadr, or the uncreated Quran, and is that literal or is that a metaphor? So the metaphor versions got more popular because it makes more sense, in my opinion. These are all sort of historical anecdotes why it wasn't really from reasoning. It was because there was a lot of violence going on, and then blowback from that, and things would settle. And so someone like Ghazali trying to reconcile the philosophers and whatnot, basically that, like, we're in like kind of a reformation right now. This is the thesis of a book I'm writing about Quranism, is that the Salafism thing was sort of a reformation from the lithographic printing press. Now everyone can read Bukhari. We don't need madhabs to interpret it for us. We'll just read it and start making fatwas on Twitter. You may have seen a lot of this. And then, we're doing it now with the internet, that we can all read Quran, we can compare notes on different translations. And I think a big theme of today's discussion, and also calling back to the shirk one, I ran a poll in the Qur'anic sub about how people in this community understand shirk. And the most popular choice, so like your theory that it's about mixing service, that was like maybe the number two, but that was like 5-10%. 70% or 75% of respondents chose any association whatsoever, right? Because I put that out there because if you just read associate as the translated word, then you'll start to think that shirk is incredibly expansive. Like you're in prayer and you think, oh, I really love my dad. He's a good Muslim. Thank God he got me back into the deen. You're associating your dad. Or you're like, oh, wow, nature is so great. God made this beautiful creation. You're associating nature. That's shirk, right? And it's the same thing with kufr, is that if I don't believe everything correctly about the correct interpretation of every verse in the Quran, and if you think verse means ayah and that there's a sign in literally every verse, it becomes even more stringent, right? This is really shackling people. And then I think what we're discussing here is that there's been this formation. Before there was a reformation, there was a formation. It took about 700 years or 500 years, and then blowback, and then like, okay, let's all get along. And Ibn Taymiyyah, who was sort of contemporary to Ghazali, was like, no, let's not get along. You guys shouldn't be visiting the tomb of the prophet. You're a bunch of mushriks. And people love him for that. And that was the seeds of the Reformation to come, with Wahhab weaponizing it. And so he was like neo-Khawarij in that vein. This is a process that every religion's gone through. And irrespective of, we're all premising our epistemics on the Quran being a more rooted revelation with better preservation, better textual reference, and thank God, right? Because alhamdulillah, for that reason, we can look at the Arabic, we can explore the translations, we can see how there's violence being done to it. It's not like with the Bible where different Protestant spins will be in the, you can sift through the translations there too, but it's, is the original Greek the actual verbatim words of the Messiah? Probably not, right? So we'll talk about that another day. I've been doing research into the Q Gospel to try to figure out what is Injil exactly, but I don't want to spin out of scope. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Pass the mic off to.
Well, no, I mean, look, I agree in terms of, I mean, the idea that that Sunni Islam ended up becoming what it was by just trying to say, hey, let's all get along and be, becoming a stabilizing force and etc., all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure I see that. Maybe it would take some more thought and looking into, but I don't think that's how it came about that way. It came about mostly out of, I think, fanatical reverence. To say that let's not talk about any of the Sahaba, let's not talk about any of the faults of the previous generations, and let's not do this, let's not do this. I think it came out of a fanaticism for that, and that came itself, it's basically it was extremist Hanbali Ahl al-Hadith sort of era, right? It came. Imam Ahmad was the one who pushed it the most. Right? Imam Ahmad was the one who pushed it the most. He would even tell his students to destroy the works of others who have these kind of narrations inside them, right? So it was this kind of reverence that had it. I mean, Imam Ahmad was a strange one, right? Because he was pro Umayyad being a Nasibi, right? So he was pro pro the thing, and not like for example like Bukhari, he's pro Umayyad and slightly Nasibi as well, right? Others as well are like Abu Dawood, right? Ibn Abi Dawood was a very very serious Nasibi, right? But Imam Ahmad was
Those are
sort of
people
like,
who cursed Ali. Just
sorry.
the audience. And Nasabi are people, they're the opposite of Rafidi. Instead of cursing
Yeah. The
Abu
Nasibi,
Bakr, they cursed
yeah, the
Ali.
Nasibi, exactly. Nasibi are people who had some sort of hatred or dislike towards Ali or the family of the Prophet or these sort of things, right? So a lot of it is out of like either misplaced seeing them as people who just wanted to rule. Anyway, the point is, and they were like, so Imam Ahmad was a strange one in that kind of way, right? So he wasn't an Nasibi, but he sort of like he imbibed a lot of these things, right? So you have this chain. I mean, Hassan Maliki talks quite a bit about this. He talks about you've got this, where are the influences? You start to just look at who influenced who, right? Who was whose teacher, not just the narrations, right? Like in the Senate, but who influenced who took from who, what kind of where are the ideas that people are coming from, right? And he says that you can bring it all the way back, right, towards the thaqaf of the Ahl Hadith, the early Ahl Hadith mentality, right? This extremist mentality that they started to have, right? And that goes back to the thaqaf al-nifaqiyya, right? That was part of the way that the munafiqeen operated was to be to be covert, right? To not want to be seen and to want themselves to be seen as the Sahaba, right? The hypocrites themselves wanted themselves to be seen as the Sahaba, and they wanted all of the Sahaba to be given high status, right? And to be given thing, right? So all the way back to, for example, Muawiyah, right? Muawiyah would go to Medina and he would see people doing things and he'd say, well, how can you do these things? I'm a companion of the Messenger of Allah and I never saw him doing these things. It's like, what do you mean you were a companion of how long were you a companion of the Messenger of Allah? What, like 1 year before before he passed away, right? He
Who
always
did he
he
convert?
would say
Was
that.
he one of the ones forgiven in Mecca? And
Yeah,
then
he was one of the
converted, or was it
Tulaqa. He
before?
was one of the Tulaqa, the ones who were
So he was
released.
literally Quraysh right up until it was like, okay, it's time to surrender. We lost the war.
Yeah. He was one
Oh
of
my
those.
God.
So he would say
That's the
this.
fear, though.
How can you do this?
I didn't
وَكُنَّا
know that.
نُصَاحِبُ. Yeah, no, that Muawiyah was very late.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing about Sunni
What's,
Islam is it can say, okay, instead of Ahlul Bayt being the leaders, it has to be Quraysh. So in other words, like the whole
yeah,
conflict is like,
exactly.
oh, but Quraysh win anyway. Like what?
Yeah,
That's so
exactly.
weird, man.
And he has, I mean, the influence that he had is huge, and it's not been looked at as much because, look, do you know how long did he rule? Do you know? Muawiyah.
Muawiyah, I
Yeah.
I think not that long, like 8 years.
No, 20 years.
Longer than Ali. 20 years. Oh,
20,
that's a decent.
20 years. 2 decades. He was the
Yeah.
complete, undisputed caliph. Okay, that's just when he was caliph. Before that, he was for 20 years the ruler of Sham, right? Like the one of the most populous region and militarily strongest, right? So he was the ruler first of all of Damascus from the time of basically Abu Bakr, right? So he went to Damascus with his brother. His brother Yazid was put in charge of Damascus, and then when he died, he took over. So he wasn't even appointed, right? He was just like he took over and started to think, and he was there for all of the caliphate of Umar, and Umar had thought to dispose him, right? Because he started to hear certain things about him, and then there's the whole idea that part of the conspiracy to how Umar died is very suspicious, very very suspicious.
Yeah, I don't
right?
think Umar was perfect, but he was definitely
But he was very,
pious
he
and
was a very
focused.
strong. He was very strong in terms of being able to control the people that he put in charge,
Yeah.
right?
And
But
he
of course,
didn't mess around.
but he relied on, who did he rely on? Him and Abu Bakr both they set aside the Ansar, even though at the Saqifa, what did they say to the Ansar? They said, we will be the caliphs and you will be the ministers. But during the time of Abu Bakr and Umar, they never employed the Ansar to do anything. It went back to the old alliance of the Jahiliyyah, right? The alliance between Quraysh and Thaqif. So Abu Bakr and Umar, the people who were put in charge of the Ummah under them, so the governors and the main people in charge, the leaders of the armies, they were Quraysh and Thaqif, right? Mostly. But the point is
Right.
that you know the how he died is very suspicious, and there's a high chance that Umar was Muawiyah was involved in that, right? You know,
Oh,
there's one
wow.
there's a Sahih
Well, I
hadith.
mentioned last time that Marwan signed a letter to get people stirred up against
Yeah.
Uthman as well, right? So
Well, it wasn't. Well, yeah,
it's
he
all
did that.
connected, man.
Even Uthman, the whole thing of Uthman. There's a very what happened around that was very suspicious. I mean, Muawiyah sent an army down because Uthman kept on. People say that Uthman didn't want to do anything. No, Uthman kept on sending letters to Muawiyah to send an army, right, to send some people down, and he refused. And eventually, he sent an army, and he told them to camp at a certain place above Medina, but not to go any further at all, no matter what happens, right? Um, and he told him don't go at all. And the reason why he wanted that to happen because he was trying sort of like the theory is that he was urging the rebels to do something, to action, because they were encamped around Uthman's house for a long time, didn't do anything, right? So by having this danger of this army as if it's about to come down, it prodded them to action, right? There was that, but in terms of Umar, it was the person who killed him was the servant of Al-Mughira. And Mughira was, of course, very close with Muawiyah. And then when
Okay,
he
I didn't.
when
I just
Uthman,
assumed it was the Zoroastrian slave. He had beef about the whole
yeah, I mean
situation,
that's
and
silly. And then, of course, what happens is that after the stabbing, what happens? Somebody throws a mantle over him, right? And then they find that he slit his throat, suicided. So somebody suicided him. Looks like, right?
oh wow, it's like Oswald. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah.
that detail. I assumed he would have been executed, but
But I mean, Hassan Malik has written a book about the hadith, which says, which at first you'd think, no, it just must be a lie, right? But when you look into the whole occasion of it, you see why it's linked there. So there's a hadith where the Prophet said, إذا رأيت معاوية يخطب على منبري فاقتلوه. If you see Muawiyah doing a khutbah on my mimbar, then kill him, right? And it's a sahih hadith, right? In terms of like this, the science of hadith when it's calibrated for, even normally it's sahih, but normally I think it's around hasan or something. But if you calibrate it for the the political allegiances and stuff like that, it becomes sahih, and it has lots of different things. So Hassan Maliki is very strict when he's saying if a hadith is sahih or not. But when did Muawiyah do this? He actually stood up on the Prophet's minbar and started to give a khutbah. He did it at the very moment that Umar died, right? So he stood up and made
okay.
this khutbah, right? And then I think it was Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he got up and he wanted to kill him. And then somebody said, what are you doing? He said, I heard the Prophet say that when you see Muawiyah doing a khutbah on my thing, then kill him. He said, we've also heard that, right? But don't do something until we ask Umar about it. He's just been stabbed. Let's wait for him and ask him about what should we do, right? So they waited. And it was only a little bit of time later, a very short time, that somebody came and announced that Umar had died. So it seemed that, because look, Muawiyah would never, ever have stood on the minbar of the Prophet, right? If he knew that Umar was going to live, and he would, he'd be furious with him. Yeah, he was very scared of Umar.
Sure.
So the
I love the
idea is that,
hadiths where Umar beats up Abu Huraira for
yeah, I
just,
mean, Umar,
for saying
Umar
sus things.
was
That's
a
very
loose
Umar.
cannon, right? Loose cannon. But so it
Yeah.
seems that he knew he had, either through one of through his sister or somebody, he knew when Umar died, and then he rushed to the mosque to stand on the Prophet's minbar, hoping that people would see him there and start to accept him as a leader figure, right?
Literally grandstanding.
Yeah, like this kind of grandstand. Now he's like standing on the Prophet's minbar, hoping that maybe he could become the caliph afterwards or something, right? So already he was
I want to
looking. Anyway.
see the Martin Scorsese crime movie about the fitna with this whole, it's like a 3 hour long Irishman style, like the Umayyad crime family, because it's really and it's stories this good usually have been told by now, but this one hasn't because it would piss off a lot of potentially violent people coming back to the original theme. And it's like the Hawarij were operating in a mindset of like we are fighting jihad against the munafiq ascendancy, right? I mean, they had the theme right, but then they lost the tazakia, they lost the wisdom, they lost the like patience, and they killed the wrong guy as well, right? They killed like the one good. Well, I don't want to say that's like too Shia, but they killed one of the best caliphs, right? Was Ali, and they failed to kill Muawiyah. And if they had, maybe I don't know, maybe we'd be same idea as like maybe if the
But look,
Mutazilates were more
even that,
nice.
I mean, that's the narrative we're given, right? That's the narrative we're given. That needs investigation as well. Like how what happened there exactly, right? Because that's very suspicious as well. But anyway, the one why I mentioned that before is just altogether, Muawiyah, he was a caliph for such a long time, and most people know very little, almost nothing about that 20-year period where he was a caliph. What happened there? What did he do, right? What was his actions? How did he influence the ummah, right? What changed during that time? He wasn't inactive. He wasn't inactive, right?
Well,
he was very
I
active
think
during that
kind of
time. And one of the things he did was
like
actually stir up different tribes against each other, right? He did a lot. There was a lot that happened in that time where it created a lot of trouble, right?
Well,
And a
I
lot
was
of
going to say that the sort of Quranist 102 level theory is that a lot of the theology, like the 25 or so Qudsi hadiths from Abu Huraira, were and a lot of these other things that overly legalize the religion and kind of take away, make you up too obsessed about prayer fiqh to really get into the salah mentally, and so on. They all came from Umayyad tinkering.
yeah, I mean,
And we were talking
a
about
lot
this at
of
the end last time.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the narrating that Abu Hurairah did, he did during that time, during Muawiyah's time. Don't forget, Muawiyah
Yeah,
made him the governor of Medina. Abu Hurairah, Muawiyah made him the
right.
governor of Medina,
Very
right?
sus.
Yeah,
And
and he
he was
made him the
married to a
governor.
woman who he was previously enslaved to, or something like
Yeah,
this.
he made him governor of
So
Medina, and
that's
his son-in-law used to say that Can Abu Huraira either when Abu Huraira when Muawiyah would send him wealth money, he would keep quiet, and when he forgot about him, he would start to talk, meaning he would start to talk about certain narrations that Muawiyah didn't want to be heard, right? He would start to say
that was
certain things that
Abu
he
Huraira's
would,
pouch.
yeah,
He
yeah,
he appropriated the language from the Quran about the Prophet only speaks the wahi and not from his desires, otherwise Allah would cut his throat. And he says, Allah would cut my throat if I opened this pouch. And so he was literally he was admitting that he's got a bunch of other, for all the hadiths that he narrated, like, I don't know, like 4,000 or something,
he said,
quite a lot. He had
yeah.
even more that he was holding back on. Yeah.
He was holding back because he was being
Um,
paid to hold back on them, right? Right.
well, the Shia are really big into criticizing Abu Huraira. So they're like this.
But he didn't. I
These
mean, he
aren't
didn't
all
hold
just
out.
internet conspiracy theories that are
Yeah,
recent.
yeah,
They're traditions
yeah,
of different
yeah.
angles on
He
this
didn't.
from
He
the
didn't
Hawari
hold back.
to Shia.
He didn't hold back everything. He didn't hold. I mean, why did he become the governor of Medina? When he became the governor of Medina, because when he went to Kufa, and Muawiyah entered Kufa. He basically accused Ali of being the person who had instigated or made the instigated the people against Uthman. Basically said that, right? Um, he said that I heard the Messenger
Yeah.
of Allah say that Medina is a haram and it's blessed, etc. And whoever does a thing, من أحدث فيها حدثا, whoever does a abominable thing or something in it, then he is cursed. Upon him is the curse of Allah and the angels of Allah. And then he said, I swear by God that Ali has done an abominable thing in it. So he's saying Ali is cursed. So when Muawiyah heard that, he was pleased, and he made him the governor of Medina, right? So it was
So
these sort
he's
of
a true Nasari, or not Nasari. That's the Christian thing. But yeah, whatever that word
Nasri,
was
yeah.
for
In,
opposite.
in
Yeah,
certain ways. I mean, so the thing about it, he was a more of a dunya person, right? So, he got,
right.
he would speak. So he did speak a lot of truths as well in in those times where he wasn't getting the money that he wanted, right? So he sort of had that leverage. That was his leverage, right? People took him
Yeah.
as a narrator, so that gave him some leverage over Muawiyah, so that when he would send him money, he would keep quiet, and when he didn't, he would start to speak. It's like, hey, you want me to keep quiet? Keep sending that money.
Well,
And,
this is the difference. Maybe this is the difference between fisk, kufr, or being a kafir, and nifaq. Is that, like, fisk is robbing somebody because you need money. You say, hey, give me your money or I'll kill you. Being a kafir is you just murder them anyway, even though they gave you your money, because you're just like, I didn't like their face. So it's like, okay, you got what's coming to you. But nifaq is this, like, deeper level of, like, selling out history. Like, your bad deeds are gonna ripple through time and
yeah,
warp the nature of how people understand God and truth, and muddy the waters, so that in 2,000 years, or however, 1,400 years, atheists will say, this religion looks pretty bad. And it's like, they're not, and you might say, well, they're kafirs. It's like, but they're coming off of, like, I saw a girl on Twitter, and she renounced Islam, which would maybe make her a kafir according to the Quran. If you Once you have the faith and then you leave it, you're toast, right? Maybe she never had the faith because she was engaged to a guy who was a literal terrorist, and he kidnapped his kids with his exes and took them to Syria. I saw
damn.
another one who's a big ex-Muslim who was engaged to a terrorist. So
Mm,
there are a number of ex-Muslims who have, like, these very severe religious trauma because they're Muslims who believe that they are mu'min and mujahideen, and that they're
yeah,
arguably they're munafiqeen instead,
yeah,
right? But
mm,
they're confused. They're, like, deeply confused about it. And
mm,
of course, there are people who would argue that reformers are munafiqeen, or who were kafirs for being, following the Quran and things like this.
mm,
And then there are some people who renounce the faith. So you might say that they're a kufr. Like, and it's funny, I find you all over the internet in the path of what I happen upon, right? So I was watching this video of a debate between Dr. Javad Hashmi and Dr. Shadi Al-Masri, talking about
mm,
the perennialism in the Quran, how much is there, and
mm,
basically, uh, Dr. Hashmi was erring on the side of, like, there's a lot of perennialism. It's kind of more
mm,
your position, and Al Masri was erring on the side of, like, no, you have to, like, basically believe in the prophet specifically. And I feel like he was going to say you have to follow the Sunnah and all the hadiths and all this stuff, that you have to have one
mm,
of these arikas as well, but that didn't come up. Um, and I saw your comment on there, and that was the academic that you were citing the last time when we talked about this, the MIDA 72,
mhm,
and so that was interesting. And that's a bigger, this perennialism thing is maybe out of scope for today. And then I
mm,
saw this guy who's, like, an agnostic, and you were trying to, like, vibe with him because you're always trying to represent Islam in this very, like, pacific way that has decent apologia for all the nitpicks about, slaves and the wife beating. It's like, wow, people got it wrong. And I don't remember the guy's name, but he was the one who had left the religion because, among other things, the Zulkarnain thing, he didn't find that intellectually satisfying. So he just kind of,
mm,
he used to be really into it, and then he kind of burned out. Um, so that's kind of another phenomenon.
mm,
Um, so okay, so real quick, so I wanted to mention those things, but let's do a little Tadaburat and then I'll hop off.
yeah,
Um, so you're mentioning, in the Abadi perspective, they were deterministic, and for a long time they believed that they were the only ones who were going to be saved, and they've softened up on it in the last 50 years
mm,
because of Sultan Qaboos doing a lot of interfaith dialogues. And basically, they're like, okay, we're following Islam in a very rigorous way. These other people might be talking themselves into sinning because they believe in intercession, and that's wrong, but not necessarily all of them. There's probably a lot of good Muslims out there. It's fine. We're doing business with Saudis and UAE people. Let's be nice. The Sunnis and the Shia maybe they can be saved too, right? But when Shaitan, when Iblis talks about, I'm going to, the majority of them are going to hell, it seems to reinforce that worldview. However, this is not God saying that, right? It's Iblis saying that. And
You're
this is
talking about the
part
verse
of
that I have here. You're talking about the verse of you won't find
one you
most of them
quoted.
as, most of them shakirin, right?
I'm keeping it on topic. Yeah,
Mm.
we're doing actual Tadaburat. I'm not just spiraling on.
Yeah, no, it's all right. No, because I don't think it's saying that most of them are going to hell. Just most of them will not be shakirin, right? So,
But yeah, we don't know how many people who are like, kind of in the middle, that God will say, well, they did a few nice things. I'll forgive the other ones and consider them not to be
yeah.
kafirs and give them a crack.
Mm.
So there's another verse that I want to talk about that's kind of the opposite of this. And it's also in one of these storytelling moments that sets the stage of history. So in Maida 27, not 72, now we're flipping it. Maybe this get Edith
Maida
Buxel and
27.
talk about numerology. And relate to them in truth the story of Adam's two sons, how each offered a sacrifice. One's offering was accepted while the other's was not. So he threatened his brother, I will kill you. His brother replied, Allah only accepts from the mutakin. So I'm going to leave that because this is one of those words. Like, what does that mean? And so in the traditionalist theology, in addition to being paranoid about, do you believe all the right things? Am I a kafir for believing in Adamic exceptionalism? Am I a kafir for thinking there's a little bit more free will than I definitely believe in Allah's power and qadr and how much we have to be grateful for the causality of our lives. But like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not totally mutazilite, but I tend to think maybe hyper occasionalism makes more sense. Whatever, right? So people have to worry about, oh, am I kafir? Do I have all the right beliefs? Now Qur'anists go in the other direction. Oh, they're all mushriks. Am I associated? And if I think about anything in Salah, and then also, are my deeds being accepted? Am I doing this donation with the right purity of intent? And that is something the Quran addresses. You can definitely do a donation with the wrong intent. So there's a basis for this. But this verse, and there's also, we were talking about Ali, there's some hadith from Ali saying, he says, Allah says that only the mutakin's deeds are weighed, basically. This is how this has been interpreted. So that, let's assume that's sahih enough. That this is how people generally interpreted it, is that this quote of Abel before he gets murdered, and he's kind of being a little smug here and kind of asking for it, and his brother, he's already getting his life threatened, right? But maybe you want to be a little more deferential to your angry brother. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten murdered. So this is my point, is that maybe, because I'm not saying go ahead and do good deeds with like selfish intent and God will accept it. I don't know. I hope that God is like your perspective, that God will generally weigh the good deeds that people do unless their intentions are totally selfish. And it's such a fine line that you have to walk. But God is quoting Abel here. God is not actually saying this. So you might say, well, God, this story is in the Quran because God wants us to take this meaning at face value. But it's one of those things that goes back to what we were debating about. Their deeds will be scattered like ash, that there will be no weight. The word that is used throughout the Quran is habitat, which I Googled the translation in Arabic. She was disappointed. And I'm like, what? What is it? And I'm like, oh, impotent. Their deeds will be impotent. So that actually kind of talks back to your theory that the deeds themselves are not rightly situated, right? And in Arabic, in this time period, everything was very sexual, and that the Quran is very euphemistic. So it kind of makes sense that their deeds won't have weight as the habitat, that there's like a sexual pun, but it's very much understated. It's just in the colloquial idiom of the time. What do you think about this doctrine that is common in at least Sunni Islam, and I think throughout the sects, that your deeds only have weight if they are properly grounded in intent? And do you think that the literary quotation device here has any meaning other than just the surface level?
Yeah, no, I don't think when it comes to in your intentions, right? And doing things, of course, with the right intention. I don't think that this kind of like you have to do something with this complete intention of what. So what you say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm doing it for God's sake, right? And
Right.
that's the only intention that's going to work. No. So a lot of the things, in fact, there might be things which is better to do than just say, okay, I'm doing this for God's sake, right? Well, if you're walking past somebody who is very hungry, a poor person on the street, very hungry, right? And you go, okay, I'm going to feed this person. I'm doing it for God's sake and not doing it because the person's hungry. Well, I would think that God actually would want you to do it because the person, out of compassion,
Sure.
right? Out of compassion that the person is hungry, that the person needs something, right?
Well,
So
and that speaks to your theory that like agnostics or even some atheists who are like believe in a certain moral principle are not
yeah,
truly
yeah,
kafirin because they're not even doing it on a heaven hell carrot stick
yeah,
logic. So in fact, there's more like being a Marxist who doesn't go too far with it and isn't too
mm,
degenerate and sinful and faisha oriented, you know, falls into
yeah,
this. They're doing it because they believe it's right. So that might
yeah.
even we don't know how God's
Yeah.
going to weigh that.
Yeah, so I mean, I mean, I look at it, I don't see anything really about. I mean, you're saying you're talking about that intentions. The only thing which I see, I think that comes to mind now, a verse which actually talks about more intentions, is that the verse where he says, "Wallahu ya'lamu al-muslih min al-mufsid." That God knows the difference between somebody who intends salah and somebody who intends fasad, right? And Allah knows the difference between these two. But in terms of like
Well, what is facade?
facade, like and corruption, right? To make something
Oh, okay.
worse, right? So Allah knows the difference between the person who wants to fix things and the one who wants to break things and make things worse, right? Um,
Well, that's
Other than
nice
that,
because I'm
with
I'm very
them,
paranoid about those verses early in Baqarah about people who are do-gooders, but they're corrupt and they don't perceive it. And I'm
mm,
like, you know, because I want to make things better, but
yeah,
I'm also not orthodox, obviously, and here
mm,
I am. We're
yeah,
talking, right? So I worry about that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So, but
But you're saying
I
if
don't
my
see.
intentions are pure, maybe don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't see anything in the Quran which talks about that everything has got to do with intentions, right? I don't see that this same like what we have in the Hadith, إنما الأعمال بالنيات, right? Uh, that your actions are only by intentions, and the person will only have what he intended, right? So whoever's
Well, yeah, there's an
hijrah
Abu
is
Hurairah Qudsi hadith that is extreme in this regard, where somebody
yeah,
did like a ton of charity, they died in battle, and there was a third one I remember, and God's like, yeah, but you did it for your own pride, so go to hell. And it's like,
yeah.
well, geez, that's like that's pretty dramatic, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so
So
look,
maybe
I
that's an
mean,
Abu Hurairah
intention.
original.
Yeah, and also I think people's intentions can be more complicated, right? So you can have um, multiple intentions in something, right? It doesn't have to be just
Yeah.
one thing. So in the end, look, the way God was going to weigh these deeds, part of that will be incorporated, like the purity of action in your deed will make it probably weigh more, right? And the less, the more sort of like it's for pride or for this or whatever, then the less it will be probably. So this will all be part of the weighing. In terms of this verse that you mentioned, where it says, in Allah تقبل من المتقين, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the muttaqin, right, to understand who are they, right? So God only accepts from the muttaqin, and the many verses which talk about the muttaqin. So one of the one like one of the one key one, for example, is um, in Surah Al-Qasas. I bring this one up a lot, where Allah says, "Tilka darul akhirah." This is the next life, the world of the next life. This also comes into intention when you talk about intention. This is such is the abode of the next life. تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها, we make it نجعل للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا, to those who do not want elevation on the earth, علوا, they don't want like to be prideful or elevated on the earth. They don't intend to put themselves above everybody else. These sort of things.
Mm,
لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا, no fasad. They don't want this nor this, right? And
mm.
that's a very accessible thing. And the verse finishes off, "Wallahu alimun bil muttaqin," and God knows who the muttaqeen are, right? So indicating that these are the muttaqeen. People who are like this are muttaqeen, right? And in another verse, you've got the verse which says, "Those who stay away from the major sins and indecencies, except for the small things," right? And again, that verse ends by saying, um, God knows who has taqwa, right? So even these things, just staying away from the major sins and indecencies, that automatically puts you within the category of the muttaqeen, right? Just staying away
But
from the big sins, right? And so if you say, إِنَّمَا اللَّهُ يَتَقَبَّلُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, God is only going to accept from the muttaqeen. If you want to take that verse as a broad thing, I mean, I think it's talking mostly about the sacrifice, right? That verse is really talking about the sacrifice that they were doing, right? Um, but if you want to take it as a broad way, then again, the baseline for taqwa is pretty accessible, right? There are a lot of people who are going to be of the muttaqeen, right? Don't kill, don't steal, don't defraud orphans, don't bear false testimony. They're the major sins, right? The major sins, zina, don't accuse a woman of zina. The major sins and indecencies, right? The people who stay away from them, right? They are people of taqwa, right? So they will have their deeds accepted, if you want to take that verse in that kind of way.
But to give you a counterexample, though, I believe the word taqwa has in its etymological root a sense of fear. Like it's not all about God fear. That's like a little bit of a blunt translation, but it's not just people of righteousness because you can be self-righteous, right? And
Mm,
that also like people who are not don't have a lot of iman or don't really have iman. They have iman in concepts like utopian ideals. So like a secular leftist, maybe they do a ton of charity work, they do a lot of volunteering, and then they, do some kamar and they do some zina and whatnot because they don't see anything wrong with it, right? And they don't have a fear that's going to hold them back from enjoying those things, right? So that's going to weigh on those scales for them. It's going to hurt
yeah,
your odds, right? Even though they have all these good deeds.
yeah.
Um,
I don't think. I mean, for
so I
example, I
don't
don't
know.
think. I don't think there's a fear within the etymology. There's a fear factor within taqwa. I don't think there is at all. I know it's always
Okay.
usually translated in that way, but taqwa it means sort of like to have a like yattaqi something means to like be wary of it, right? To sort of protect yourself from
Sure.
something. To protect yourself from
Yeah,
something.
I guess that's what I was alluding to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more like that. It's
Well,
like
you,
having
you're
a shield,
saying you,
like having a
you
shield,
could take the
right?
verses just being about the specific instance. So everything, like I feel like in Quranic studies and interpreting different verses and what they mean, there's a spectrum between saying this was just about these people in this context. So like,
Mm,
don't worry about mushrikeen. That's just talking about the people of Mecca and some of these other examples. And then you take the opposite approach and say, no, this is like, so for instance, pro Hadith people will take the verse in Surah Anfal about separating the war loot. You take what the prophet gives you and stay away from what he forbids you. And they say
mm,
this means you have to do every sunnah that's in every hadith, or or your prayers won't be
mm,
accepted because you didn't
mm,
follow the sunnah form that we had to collate over the centuries, and now we haven't. You
mm.
have to, and everything is a metaphor, and it's also like, is this a mubin versus an allegorical, right? So this is another choice that people get to make in interpreting the Quran, and it has implications for fiqh and for theology, right?
Yeah.
Another classic example in progressive, which kind of overlaps with Quranist movement. People, women say, I don't want to wear hijab. It makes me more singled out because I live in the West, so people are going to look at me even more. And the point isn't that people back then in the desert, of course, they had head coverings. It was hot; they had to shave their foreheads, and it's not about the head covering. It's about not having visible busts and
Mm,
adornments, right? So I'll wear like a
mm,
sweatshirt that's loose and that satisfies it. And maybe that is acceptable. I don't know. I don't have that problem. But I have my own problems, trying to be a good Muslim. But um,
mm.
and there's in between interpretation. You can say, well, this is maybe a metaphor, maybe, or there are layers. You could say there's a metaphorical meaning. Sufis traditionally have done this a lot, right?
Mm.
And then there's also the exoteric fiqh meaning. Um, and I
Mm.
just I'll leave it there because that's a really big thing. But I think this is,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's the
I
same with
understand.
jihad and with who's a
Yeah,
kufr and we have to fight the kafirs. Is like,
yeah.
should we be terrorists? Should we, or was this just for that war? Well, clearly the people who survived Muhammad late sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not think so, and that we continued to have all these wars, and then we had all the sectarian wars because they're kuffar, but we're the real Muslims because we're the Shia, or that they're Rafidis, and we have to, and it goes on and on. And this is the wheel of bad karma, if I can borrow a term from outside of Islam, that has kept the ummah in slavery to maybe that's not even good jihad. Maybe it's jihad that sends you to hell. There's a hadith when two believers meet in battle, they're both going to hell, right? So you have the battle of the camel, the battle of Siffin, etc., and on throughout the whole history, which I can go on about. So it's important, and the Quran. I don't think the Quran is always totally clear about which part of the spectrum. Is this totally historical? Is this totally universal? Is this totally metaphorical? It's not always clear, and you can move those dials on different things and arrive at very different interpretations of Islam.
Yeah, I mean,
and maybe they're all acceptable. Maybe some are better or worse than others, obviously by the consequences. And maybe if kufar is about, rejecting the messenger, it's just the 5 key pieces of adhika, maybe even fewer, as you've suggested. It's just got to kind of believe in some kind of judgmental morality score in life. That's like the minimum viable interpretation of that. I think that's better because it means we can respect different interpretations, and you see it in the nations that implement these interpretations, how it goes. Such as Oman today versus 50 years ago, right? So I'll leave it with that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Walaikum assalam. Let me get on. I think I've got one person behind, so I'll bring on a perfect dawah, right? Right. Okay. Brilliant. Nice. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, wa alaikum assalam. Perfect dawah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you? Yes. I was having live, and Hourglass said that you are live. So after
so you came on here.
Yes.
Who's Hourglass?
Hourglass is brother. I think he's in the chat now. And Sayed also. They usually every Saturday they call in. Anton also sometimes call in, and we have chat there.
Yeah, I see him. He came on. He was in the chat over here.
Yes.
And what did he write here? Let me see. I think I fit the description of Kafir.
Yes, we have had this discussion with him, with Anton as well. That no, I don't believe that Kafir means disbelief, and I think he accepted later. It doesn't mean disbelief, because once he told me that, I think you are right, that it doesn't mean because disbelief, because it is very clear in, I think, chapter 2 verse 36 that Allah says Shaitan became a kafir after is it 36, I think, chapter 2 verse
I mean
36.
I have it in this presentation, so
that he said Shaitan
34.
34, yes, exactly. Shaitan became a kafir when he what is it, he refused, exactly. So it is that's very clear that he was talking to Allah. So I'm talking to Brother Khalid now. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that he exists. I just, if he tells me to do something and I refuse, it doesn't mean that I don't believe that he exists. I just refuse to his command. So kafir for me, according to Quran, is the one who rejects Allah's command. And chapter 16 verse 90, Allah says he only ask us to do good deeds. He guide us to good deeds. So this is only what he asks us. So, and I was actually, I have had this debate with Hourglass about chapter 5 verse 38. And I don't know if you watched that video that I told you Brother Rashid made finally, because do you watch it? Because,
I did. I mean, look, when it comes to that, I think the issue, the argument that he puts forward is okay. I don't think it's entirely that strong. I think the reason why is because you have to put yourself in a position where you are somebody who's going to be um, um, you're receiving the Quran, right? You're listening to it, and it can't be. I don't think it can be that that you have to basically go through so many different other language points from different verses in order to understand that verse. So it would almost be like saying, okay, then if this verse was revealed, if somebody had been passing by, right, a masjid, and this surah had been recited, right, this surah had been recited, and then the person went on, okay. Now he's not going to go and compare that word, the cutting of the hands. He's not going to be able to compare it with the women in the story of Yusuf. He's not going to be able to compare it to somewhere else. He's not going to be able to compare it to these other verses, right? He just heard that surah as it is, right? He's gone on his way. What would he understand from that? What would he understand from that, right? That's one thing. So to me, the issue isn't trying to prove that it can mean that. I think it can be. I mean, even if you say it can't mean to cut the hand, that's not even an issue for me, because I think that these laws are not set in stone, like what the Quran is recommending for the people then at the time of the Prophet, right? There's a reason why, for example, there's no option for prison. Why is there no option for prison? Because they never had prisons. Medina, the infrastructure was not there, right?
Yeah.
So that's, if there had been prisons, then maybe that would have been put in place, right? So that isn't an issue, right, for me. Later, because the Quran talks about this for Rafif, that doesn't mean we can't use prisons. We can, right? So there isn't an issue when it comes to that. But in terms of the verse itself, you want to sort of like say that no, it can't mean that. That's what you have to show. You have to show not what it can mean, but you have to show that it can't mean this other thing, right?
Okay.
You have to show that and that's more. I don't see how you could go about that.
All right. Yes. If I may explain, because if we just translate, we have to accept that according to chapter 3 verse 7, there are precise verses and unspecific verses, okay? So mutashabihat, and the unspecific verses, there are those verses that you might see how do you say it, a meaning that it might not be that meaning, because for example, Dr. Hani was saying that this is like those people who see what is it? I've forgotten the word in English, that they see two different views. Yeah, their eyes is like that. Okay, so he was using this word as well, that the meaning maybe is not what you see. Okay, there is another meaning that Allah says in chapter 3 verse 7, only Allah and those firm in knowledge understand the true interpretation of them. This cannot be the true interpretation. So why it is unspecific verse, I believe, is because the word qat and yat has been used, yat 120 times and qat 36 times in many different meanings. So you can't say that, no, it has to be this. When it has been used, qat has been used like other things as well, like stop as well, like separation, what is it, cutting a relation. So these are not metaphoric. And hand has been used also as power, like Quran says the Jews try to, because in that verse also some scholars, they are so ignorant that they say Allah has two hands, okay? Because Allah says in that verse that he has two hands. But it doesn't mean that in reality, it is not that what you see. It is Allah used this word hand as power. They try to, you have to interpret that one. Like somebody says in English that the basket game was hot, okay? If you ask him. You cannot translate this to many other languages. You have to interpret that, because if you say it, for example, in Swedish, that the basket game was hot, people, if they don't know that English use that, they would think that what do you say? Or in Persian or many other languages. But in their language, it is, they say the basket game was hot, but you have to interpret it in other languages. So in Quran as well, now in chapter, if I say that this shaddad, it is called, yeah?
Shidda.
Shadda, shadda. Let me bring, wait, 538. I will bring for you. Okay, that, for example, in chapter 12, verse 31, it says, no, not 12:31. There are those, for example, 5:33. Okay, when it says it use qat. Chop off their hands and feet from alternate side. There is this shadda, shadda over that qat. And chapter 12, verse 31, there is that shadda over, because Brother Rashid also was telling me that in Arabic, when you want to make something severe, you put that shadda over that, qat. Okay, so this qat, shadda, has been used in those verses about Pharaoh, says chop off their hands and feet from alternate side. Chapter 5, verse 33 as well, it is there, that shidda, which is very obvious that it is about chopping off someone's hands and feet from alternate side. Yet in chapter 12, verse 31, the qat is also again with that shidda, okay, with that it is severe, but the translators have decided to use the soft one, because it didn't make sense that women chopped off their hands. If you want to translate, just translate it, then you should translate that also in chapter 12, verse 31, that they chopped off their hands, which is not true. It doesn't make sense. Okay, what Dr. Sani was saying make very sense, that they didn't cut their hands, they didn't chop off their hands. What they did severe was they cut forever that gossip that they, because chapter 12, verse 31, it after that they stopped actually to peel, or they stopped that gossip. The situation was romantic. There was no any blood, no any screaming, and they said, what is it? They were so stoned that they said, by his grace that they cut their hands. It is absolutely not, of course, it is the translation, and exclaimed, God good, this cannot be human, this must be a noble angel. A rational person would think that why God didn't say that they screamed, they chopped, they cut their hands and so on, because they really didn't cut anything. They were, they absolutely cut their gossip forever. That's why the cut there is with shadad. But why this translator, they say they cut their hands, and then
so he's saying that what they did is they cut off the gossip, yes?
Yeah, they absolutely cut up their gossip. Yeah,
okay, but then why? No, but that makes no sense. Yeah, because before it says she gave each one of them a knife, sikina.
Yes.
And then also, if you're going to say cut off the gossip, why say hands? Why not say instead their tongues? They cut off their tongues.
Okay,
right? That would make more sense when it comes to like the gossip, right?
Okay, all right.
Hands don't have thing to do with it. But look. First, let me just go back to the issue of the mutashabihat, and because look, I know they translate them as specific and unspecific, but then the word is not that. It's muhkamat and mutashabihat. Muhkamat means literally hukum, right? It comes from hukum. It's about words which have hukum, right? And so this verse which is talking about the judgment, the hukum for the thief, right? That is a muhkam verse. It's not a mutashabih. It's not a mutashabih verse. It's clearly one of the muhkamat, right? And it's not one of the mutashabihat. Mutashabihat are not going to be the verse which have hukum in them, right? It won't be like that. Like the verses which talk about inheritance, the ones which talk about writing your will, these kind of things, who you can marry, who you can't marry. These are muhkamat verses, right? They're not mutashabihat, and this is certainly I can't see how you could claim that it's a mutashabih. It's about a hukum, right? It's trying to give it a specific hukum, right? With regards to a sariq was sariqa, right? And then of course the verse itself, like others as well, when it says جزاء بما كسب نكالا من الله, right? I don't think there's anything which is in it which you can say just no, it can't mean that, right? Like I said, if you want, you have to show that it can't mean cut. If you're going to talk about, you have to show that it can't mean that, rather than it can mean something else, right? And to show that it can't mean cut off their hands, it's a very difficult thing to bring about, because it's just very clear.
Okay, so look, Brother Rashid also was saying that it doesn't say one hand, it doesn't say two hands, it doesn't say from wrist or from elbow. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want to say wash your hands, it says exactly from where to wash your hands, okay? But in this verse, it doesn't say. And another thing is about the muhkamat. Muhkamat is, in reality, it doesn't mean that it is just a hukm, okay? It is about precise verses that Allah says they are the foundation of the book, okay? So they decide for foundation of the book is being merciful, being forgiving, okay? And if these mutashabihat, they go against God's mercy and forgiveness, then you have made some mistake in interpretation of that. Because this is not just that, for example, there is another verse in Quran that says stealing, let me see, there was a verse in chapter Yusuf, stealing a hearness, okay? So even stealing information, all right, it is also, according to Quran, is stealing. So you have to, what you're going to do there? You have to chop off their ear. Why you have to chop off someone's hands if...
I'm not sure what you mean. There's another verse about stealing information. What is that?
Let me see. Yeah, I have to find it. But there are many verses, of course, I have about how the qat and how the hand has been interpreted. Forgot. I have to find it. It is about. There is a verse in chapter Yusuf. It's about stealing information. Okay.
No, I mean you were talking about when they stole the cup of the.
No, not stole the cup. It says I cannot find it right now because I have had it. It's about stealing information. Okay. Those who steal hearing, it says as well. Okay, I have to find it.
The story of Yusuf, that's the only thing which talks about stealing. Well, what information was stolen in that story?
Maybe it's not Yusuf. Okay. Chapter 15, verse 18. Okay, it says that except one who steals a hearing and is pursued by a clear burning flame. Okay. So chapter 15, verse 18 is about stealing.
Yeah, so it's about basically dropping. It's talking about the shayateen who listen to the things. So I mean, again, so
Yeah, but that's also stealing. Like, for example, today we have spies who steal information. Okay,
yeah,
that's also stealing. So you have to chop off their ear. Because
no, I mean we're not being told that already. Allah is sending after them Ishihab and Mubin, right? So okay. I mean this is a different world.
Yeah,
We're talking
but
about the world of the shayateen,
yeah,
of the jinn, basically, right?
okay, but Brother Khalid,
We're
yes,
not gonna we don't have to punish a jinn who said
no,
they
no,
have ears or
okay, but how about humans who steal information today? That's also stealing according Quran. So, but another thing is
no.
that, yes, another thing is that, Brother Khalid, another thing is that, first of all, as I said, we don't know according if we take it as chopping hand, we don't know for how much, for $5, $1,000, $1 billion, and it is not just that somebody for stealing $1 you chop off his hands, and somebody who steal $1 billion also chop off their hands. It is absolutely unjust. And next verse, chapter
I mean,
5
look, I'm
verse
not
39.
saying. I mean, I understand. Look, I understand because I've heard these things. This is one of the ways that people say no, you need hadith, because without hadith you wouldn't know how much is the limit. No, look, there are things we're not being given these sort of stringent things because they're not. It won't always fit, right?
Okay.
What the amount that would be acceptable. To cut somebody's hand off in Medina in the 7th century might not be the same now. Okay, these
Yeah.
things can change. They're left to us, to our judgment, right? So we can come to a consensus as a society and decide that what kind of stealing is going to constitute. Is going to be if we're going to go with cutting hands instead of prison, right? What kind of stealing? What limit? What damage it will do, what kind of, we can put these together and decide, okay, under these circumstances, we cut off the hand.
Okay.
Without it, no, we don't. We can do that. Okay, it's not something which is going to be a difficult thing to resolve in that kind of way.
All right.
So, for example, let's say somebody steals the wealth of like a very I don't know, elderly person, right? Defrauds her. She doesn't have anybody with her. Lives alone at home. She's not technically gifted, and somebody comes in and somehow gets to steal all of her life savings, right? Okay. And then look at the situation that she could be in. She can't pay her electricity bills, right? She gets cold. She could freeze to death. She can't get enough now to eat. She's got debts she has to pay. Her house gets repossessed because she can't make the mortgage payment. Stealing. Stealing has a big. It's not a small thing. We need to remember that stealing is a very. You talk about it like cutting off the hand of a thief. It's very barbaric. Then what theft can be very barbaric. It can be very something which really, really damaging, right?
Okay.
And causes a lot of harm and a lot of pain and a lot of problems. Somebody could have something which is very valuable to them. It might not be worth a lot, but it could be something which is passed on from generation to generation, like from their ancestors. Something it's an heirloom, right? Very valuable thing, and the person might just steal it just out of hatred of the person, not because it's valuable. It can't be sold, right? And the person might steal it just out of spite, out of hatred, because out of not wanting the person to have it, right? Also, look at the circumstances of the thief. Is the person doing it because they need something, or is this now their profession? Are they just a professional thief? Is that they're doing not because they're hungry or they need or they're trying to make payments for their own mortgage? We can look at all of these things, right? We don't have to be so simplistic about the things which God commands us to do, right?
All right.
God is not micromanaging us.
All right. Okay. But you said
micromanaging us for these things.
Yes, sorry, Brother Khalid. You said we have to do what God said to do. Okay. Okay. So that's about that. Our what is it? Feelings that this is very that poor woman, make it dramatic. This is, if God said to chop off their hands, that's something else. But my question is that why in chapter 12 verse 31, despite it has that what is it, shadda, yes, despite it has that shadda, and it is similar to those chapter 5 verse 33, that it is clearly chop off their hands and what is it, leg from alternate side, and those other verses that about Frown said that I will chop off your hands and leg from alternate side and so on. So they are, all of them have, without exception, they have this shidda. And this chapter 12 verse 31 has also this shidda. If you translate chapter 5 verse 38, and first of all, if you want to translate it, then it has to be a soft cut, not chop off, because chop off is in 1231. But if you translate it, then why here in 1231 the translation suddenly changed to from this shidda, from this severe cut, to a soft cut, which doesn't make sense either for me. That they cut their hands because of the atmosphere. It was very loving atmosphere. It was very romantic atmosphere. And that's why this translator also decided that they couldn't have chopped off their hands. They just cut their hands. So they used a little bit rationality. And for me, chapter 5 verse 39 says that this is not chop off hands, because Allah says if they repent, Allah forgives them. And I have said always give this example, that I passed a red light, the police officer catch me, he fined me $1,000 and he take my driving license, and I say, officer, forgive me, I made a mistake. The officer tells me, okay, I forgive you, but you have to pay the $1,000 and I take your driving license. What kind of forgiveness is that one? Either the officer doesn't understand what is forgiveness, or something else, because the forgiveness at least should be that he take back the $1,000 ticket. A judge, when he judge you to 10 years jail, okay, and you spend all those 10 years jail, and then at the last day you come out and the judge tells you that I forgive you, you will tell to the judge that, come on, I spent all my time, what you didn't forgive anything. At least if after 5 years you let me go, that would be a forgiveness. Okay. When Allah says I forgive if they repent, it means that they shouldn't suffer such a I say barbaric punishment. Okay. Despite they have been punished. Somebody like this Sheikh Haddad says that we punish people so that we purify them. Okay. So, and I say, for example, if I want to go to heaven, I just kill somebody and get executed by them, and I become purified and go to heaven. Okay, which is absolutely wrong. We cannot take. And then another thing is that which judge is going to judge? Like Iranian regime, a bunch of mafia, they chop off people's hand, and they are themselves a bunch of robbers themselves. The judge, how do we know that judge that is going to judge someone else? Like Jesus, peace be on him, said, the one who has no sin threw the first stone. Because we are all sinners, we cannot punish each other. I say we have to help each other. Ali radiallahu says totally opposite to these things. If I may read for you how he was teaching his governor of
yeah, you read it to me for last time,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yes,
He was saying that instead of punishing people, you have to forgive people. You have to, the judgment of people. He says, Ali radiallahu, the worst people for you, O Malik, must be those who try to reveal people's mistake and sins, because people make mistakes and sins, and the governor is the one who must cover them. Do not try to find out people's mistakes, because your duty is to fix the problem that leads people to bad deeds, and it is God's right to judge people, not yours. Cover people's mistakes and sins as much as you can, so that God covers yours. So we are all sinners ourselves. We cannot punish the judge that might chop off someone's hands. I said that there are a lot of them now in many of these countries, so-called Islamic countries. The one who implemented the Sharia law in was Indonesian law. He was lashed himself for adultery. Few months later, he was himself an adulterer, and he wanted to implement this Sharia law. So these people can be themselves like the head of Iranian, this hijab center in a province of Mazandaran, it came out that they were themselves homosexuals, themselves two mullahs. They were sleeping with each other. The video came out, and these people kill women whose hair is out. Okay, so I say we have no right to judge people, and we always can be wrong in our judgment. Even today in 21st century, countries like Sweden, the guy was 8 years in jail for murder. After 8 years, they found out that he was innocent. They gave him 4 million krona in compensation. So we can be always wrong. So we shouldn't punish anybody. Even if we punish, it has to be reversible. It has to be like jail, that we can at least release the person and ask for forgiveness for punishing you wrongly. Chopping their hands off, you cannot, if you find out later. So absolutely, I do not believe that this is chopping off hand. I believe that this is, as Brother Rashid also was saying in that video, it is rehabilitating them, and when they repent, we forgive them, and Allah forgive them. Because so, and I don't want to take more of your time, Brother Khaled. Thank you for this discussion.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Look, I mean, I agree with you on that. I'm just saying that you can have it both ways. I mean, I don't think that what you're saying is well, I do think it's wrong in one way, but in terms of what you can do to criminals, yes, that's one path to it. But there are times where times and places where you don't have to have that that luxury. In a small place like, for example, Medina at that time, where stealing was just not there was no prison or this. This chop off somebody's hand for stealing a huge amount of money, or amount of money which is significant. I don't think that's wrong at all. Why should the person stick out their hand to steal something, right? Stick out your hand to put your hand in somebody else's wealth and take it? No. Why not? Why isn't it just that the person could lose that hand? Why not? He put his hand where it shouldn't be, right? So I don't think it's unjust for it to be done that. But I also think that yes, you can use prison sentences. You can use other things. And that's fine as well. But what was sent then at that time for Medina, especially at that time, yes, it was. Everybody would have understood that the verse is saying to cut off the hand. I don't see how anybody could understand it any other way. And to say that no, the reason, how we're going to find out it means something else is now we need the whole Quran to be there, right? Remember, this verse was it's just one. It's a verse in the surah, right? So if you only had that surah, this analysis that you're saying you make by using is there shidda here, is there shidda there, the shidda doesn't change the whole meaning in that kind of way, Qatal still means kill. Qattala still means kill, right? Just means like do it even more strongly, right? So to say that the only way we're going to understand the word is by this, and it's a common word. No, qata' is a common word in Arabic. It's not one of the words which the Quran invented, right? It's not a new word the Quran invented. It's not one of the words which was obscure and the Quran is using it, right? There are common words in the Quran which is supposed to be easy to understand. It's not supposed to be difficult where you need overly fraught analysis for the common easy words, right? Like I have to analyze the Quran to understand what sky means or what the earth means or
can I ask you a question, Brother
Khaled?
So that Shaddad on 1231 and other verses like 533. Okay, that's just has no meaning, or it has a meaning?
No, it has a meaning. It has a meaning,
So
but it's not radically. But it's not radically different. It's not radically different from the original meaning.
So if it has a meaning, then why in chapter 5, verse 38, they didn't put that one? And this is actually, this is one of my argument for those who say that Quran wasn't preserved, that even these, small details were preserved. That in 538,
well, no, I mean
they didn't put it.
to be absolutely clear, right? You'd have to look at all of the different qira'at of that. If they all agree with where the shadda is in these verses, then I'd say yes, okay, that has been agreed upon. If they differ, then no, because these qira'at, they are divergent, right? The qira'at are different, right? Some of the qira'at, in the places where they're different, we don't know what the original was, what the real qira'ah was. We don't know, right? And you can't find them. The shidda, there's no shidda in the manuscripts, right? The shidda in the early manuscripts of the Quran, there's no shidda. I didn't have that thing. It all comes from the qira'at only, right?
Yes.
So if you can show the exact, where the shiddas are, in the different verses, the way that you think they are, as they are on the Hafs, I'm imagining you're looking at Hafs qira'ah, right?
Yes.
You can check the other qira'at. Maybe you won't find that there. Maybe you find it different. Okay, you might find that the qira'at there differ in where there's a shidda and where there isn't. Okay, there is, for example, I know, for example, in Hafs, in very start of the Quran, right? Yakzibun is in Hafs, whereas in other verses like Warsh, in the other versions of Warsh, it has Yukazzibun. You have the shidda in that one, right? So in one of the verse, in one qira'ah you have a shidda, and the other one you don't have a shidda. Okay, but the point is that the shidda doesn't radically change the original meaning of the root of what it is, right? That doesn't change it straight away to become metaphorical. There isn't a thing where there's a shidda, it's metaphorical, and no shidda, it's literal, all right, or something like that. We don't have that. But that's an interesting. I mean, that's the next stage for this research. If you're doing this research on this verse, the next stage of that is to look into the different qira'at, right? And there's a very good website called Qur'an. Let me see if I can pull it out now, where you can look at all of the different qira'at. It will show them all, right? So it's called Qur'an, the letter N, Qur'an. I'll put it now in the link, and you can use that to just check up on all of the different verses which have shidda for this, and see how it goes. Or you can put that forward to Brother Rashid, and maybe he can follow it up. So I'll put that in the link there now.
Okay.
So you can check that out, and let us know what you find out.
Right,
but anyway, okay, I think we'll end this now because
yes, all right, of course,
2 hours and bit. But Jazakallah khair again, of course, for coming on. And
thank you very much.
Let us know when you come back on.
Yeah, but I just say for those who would like to talk to me more about this, every Saturdays I go live as well, so we can talk about different issues, and this one as well. If those who would like to say something, I appreciate it very much. Yes, thank you very much, my brother.
You're welcome. Yeah, his channel is called Perfect Dawah, so you can just search that up. Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, guys. Jazakumullah khair, and I think we'll end the stream there. Take care. Yeah, Qata Kuti Cutau. Don't know what that is. It's a different language, I suppose. All right, okay, guys. We'll end it there. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you guys next time, hopefully, in 2 weeks' time. And please remember, if you have any contemplations to share, please do so. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.